Okay, let's begin chapter 12. Chapter 12 includes quite a few different techniques, and I think it's a fascinating chapter. I think you're really going to like this one. And we're going to begin with our differential analysis with relevant and irrelevant costs. So, a relevant cost is a cost that differs between alternatives, and a relevant benefit is a benefit that differs between alternatives. Now, that may sound vague right now here at the start, but you will see that this is very important in making decisions coming up. So hang in there. We also have to discuss that identifying relevant costs. An avoidable cost is a cost that can be eliminated in whole or in part by choosing one alternative or the other. Avoidable costs are relevant costs. Unavoidable costs are irrelevant costs. Two broad categories that are never relevant or irrelevant costs are sunk costs and a future cost that does not differ between the alternatives. So sunk costs, I often use buying stocks as a sunk cost example. It doesn't matter what you paid for the stock. The amount of money you paid for it is a sunk cost. What matters is what will happen to the future price. That's how you make your decision there. In sunk costs, they are irrelevant, as are any future costs that are not differ between the alternatives. So we have to identify our relevant costs, and we have a two-step process. The first one is to eliminate costs and benefits that do not differ between the alternatives. Then whatever's remaining, we look at the costs and benefits of the two alternatives remaining to make the decision. The costs that remain are differential and therefore are avoidable costs. So when we think about this, we have different costs for different purposes, and so let's look at that. The costs for one decision that are relevant in one decision may not be relevant in another context. Thus, in each decision situation, the manager must examine the data at hand and isolate relevant costs. And relevant costs are the things that only apply to this decision, and they would not apply if we did not have an alternative here. So an example, I think, will clear this up. So let's take our example. Cynthia, a Boston student, is considering visiting her friend in New York. She can drive or take the train. That's her decision. By car, it's 230 miles to her friend's apartment. She's trying to decide the alternative, which is less expensive, and she's gathered the following information. The annual straight line depreciation of the car is $2,800. That's $24,000 cost minus $10,000 salvage divided by 5 years. Her cost of gasoline is $2.70 per gallon divided by 27 miles per gallon. $45 per month times 6 months is her parking fee at school. The other costs that are thrown in here is the annual cost of auto insurance and a license, maintenance and repairs, for a total average cost. Now, as you can see, all of these are not relevant to this decision. They're relevant to Cynthia. They're absolutely relevant to her, but they're not relevant to this decision. So let's dig a little deeper. The relevant costs, the automobile costs that she has here, let's talk about a little bit more information. A reduction in the resale value of the car per mile based on wear and tear is 0.026. The round-trip train fare is $104. The benefits of relaxing on the train trip. Well, there's something to be said for not driving in New York traffic, so there's a cost there. There's definitely a benefit there anyway. The cost of putting a dog in a kennel while gone is $40. Benefit of having a car in New York, well, that might actually be a negative number, right? So we don't know that. Hassle parking in New York, that could be a problem too. And the cost per day of parking in New York is $25. So we have lots of costs and things going on in this decision. Some of them are relevant, some of them not so relevant. We have to look into these a little bit deeper. So when we think about this, what is relevant here? Which costs and benefits are relevant? The cost of the car is a sunk cost. So that's not relevant. The cost of the car is a sunk cost. That's not relevant to the decision. The annual cost of the insurance is not relevant. She's going to have insurance whether or not she goes to Boston. So when you think about, to New York, when you think about what is relevant and what isn't, it's not that it's not a relevant cost to her in her life. It's not relevant to this decision. Her overall car expenses don't count, nor would, say, parking at her university. She's not parking there. She's going to park there whether she goes or not. If she's going to do it whether she goes or not, it's not a relevant cost to this decision. Gasoline obviously is clearly relevant. If she takes the train, that cost would not be incurred, so it varies depending on the decision. Going beyond that, the cost of maintenance and repairs is relevant because these long runs depend on miles driven. Monthly school parking fee is not relevant because she's going to pay it regardless of what she does. At this point, we can say some of the average cost of the 0.619 per mile are relevant and some are not. Going beyond that, which costs the decline in resale value due to additional miles is relevant. The round train trip fare is relevant for sure. Relaxing on the train is relevant, but how do you put a number on that? So it's a factor. I would always keep it in mind, but I don't know if I would put an actual number on it. Kennel cost is not relevant because it doesn't matter if she takes the train or drives. It's relevant to her decision to go, if she go or stay, but it's not relevant to her decision to take the train or the car. Do you see the difference? The kennel is relevant to go or stay. It is not relevant to train or car. That's the difference between a cost that's relevant to this decision and a cost that's just relevant. Having a car is relevant to her life. It's not relevant to the decision because she's going to have it whether she goes or not. So you can see as you break down the decisions that there are relevant costs that go away or relevant costs that are more important. Going beyond that, cost of parking is relevant because it can be avoided if she takes the train. The benefits of having a car, finding a parking space are relevant, but they're difficult to assign a dollar amount. And so we end up with this final chart under identifying relevant costs. From a financial standpoint, Cynthia would be better off taking the train to visit her friends. Some of the non-financial factors, however, may influence her decision. So the relevant driving costs are gasoline, 460 miles at 10 cents a mile is $46. Maintenance, 460 at 65 is $29. Reduction in resale value is $11.96. Parking in New York is $50. Total is $137.86. And of course, the train ticket is $104, so the car costs a little bit more. But you can see how we've taken away a lot of the costs that originally were in the problem. Now, this is not to say that the non-financial cost, the cost of the number itself, that you can't put a number on, like hassle of parking in New York or just dealing with New York traffic and so on, that is a deciding factor in many cases. So the way I like to think of financial decisions, and I hope you will think the same way, is we always do the numbers because the numbers give us one view of the picture. But then we have other factors. In this case, hassle of New York, hassle of driving, and so on. So be thinking to yourself about all your financial decisions, your personal finance, the rest of the course, and so on. Think about, is there other factors that influence me more than just the numbers? There's been plenty of times where I've helped people with financial decisions, and the financial outcome is, the difference between the two outcomes is so small that it's not really relevant to the decision. I helped one couple decide whether they wanted to live in the Bay Area or they wanted to live in Boston. They had two competing job offers, and the job offer really came down to the common question of, do you want to live in the snow or not? And if you want to live in the snow and that's okay with you, then you can move to Boston. If you don't want to live in the snow, then I don't know how much money it would offset, but the job offers were within like $1,000 of each other. Well, nobody moves to the snow that doesn't like the snow for a $1,000 increase. So clearly, your decision making in many cases is not related just to the numbers. In this case, if Cynthia wants to take the train, that'd be great. And she may not want to take the train. Maybe she doesn't like the train and she prefers to have her own car because you can take more stuff, or you're not out in public and you can have your own quiet time or whatever you'd like. I mean, there might be all kinds of reasons why she'd want to take a car. The difference in price here is about $30, so that's her decision. The difference is it's $30 more to go this way. Then you can add all the other factors once you've done the numbers. Do the numbers first, then decide if the other factors offset that or which way you feel you'd be better off overall. The numbers do not always tell the story.